Thank God, folks, the last preseason game is about to be through with on Saturday afternoon, but I still need to preview it, right? Because number one, I feel like everyone needs to be informed of some of the key positional battles that we need to be looking out for. And then more importantly, it is just one more step before we actually see some regulation football, and we are one more step closer to quieting all of the naysayers. Damn. Folks, as you're coming in, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on bell notifications as I put out NFL content each and every single day, and I don't want you to miss a single edition. Now, folks, say that you're struggling to figure out where to watch this preseason game this weekend. Do I have the place for you? It is only at Club Bud Light at 34 Rush at Batavia Downs, folks. I'm talking the biggest TV you've ever seen in your entire life, accompanied by 31 others, drink, food specials, inspired by Buffalo Bills great Thurman Thomas. It is the only place to watch Buffalo Bills football this year if you are not lucky enough to be at the game yourself. And speaking of Batavia Downs, say for example that you guys want to get your early tickets right to the Legends and Stars Expo being held November 1st and 2nd. I highly recommend that you hit that link in my bio. We're talking all of your favorite athletes signing a variety of different memorabilia. It is the place to go to. I always want to go each and every single year, so please let me live vicariously through you. All of the stars and legends will be announced throughout the next couple of weeks, specifically after Labor Day. Shout out to Batavia Downs for sponsoring this video. So yeah, folks, as I've stated before, this game is going to be boring. It's going to be very difficult football to get through, but for anybody that's an absolute football fanatic, number one, you're watching this video because we all know that starters are not supposed to be out there. It's very important to understand as we try to solidify these final spots on the 53-man roster. Unfortunately, not everyone is going to make the team, including some favorites. So have to absolutely go through this. I'm fine with starters not playing, especially with the injury scares that we have been having to deal with from the beginning of training camp all the way through the preseason. So I'm fine. Throw the second, third string, fourth string out there, have them battle for their opportunity at the roster, and let our guys rest up because we have a hell of a season awaiting us here in just a couple of weeks. But as far as players that I really want to keep an eye out on, number one is obviously going to be Tyler Bass. I'm not sure if you guys tuned in to my stream a couple of days ago, but it was titled Tyler Bass is an Absolute Liability. And I still believe that. I sincerely do. This week in practice, I saw some stat where he went like 7 for 13. And normally I wouldn't be upset about this because it is the preseason. He obviously has some rust to knock off. But all I can think about is that wide right kick during the playoffs by itself. And it's funny because a lot of people have been asking me, Dan, should we try and get a new kicker? And I'll tell you what, the fact that if we were to walk away from him, we would only save $100,000 toward the cap this year and then add dead cap money, not this year, but the following year as well. Ultimately, we're stuck with this dude, regardless of what we want to do with him. So the only thing that we can really hope for out of Saturday's preseason matchup against the Carolina Panthers is that we get several opportunities to see Tyler Bass prove us wrong and make us feel a hell of a lot better about this special teams unit. It's funny because for the longest time, I would call Tyler Bass Bassomatic, and last year, for some reason, his inconsistencies continue to rear its ugly head. And I don't know what the issue is. I had a theory for a while that it had to do with Sam Martin holding the football, but at this point, I think I've just concluded that the dude has the worst case of the yips any kicker has ever had. So, Tyler Bass, make us believers, go 100% of your field goal attempts and offense. If you're hearing me out, be strong, but then fizzle out right in the red zone because we got to see this guy make some plays. Now, next up is going to be the wide receiver room. I think that everyone can agree that the top 5 are already locked down to make this roster. Obviously, it's Khalil Shakir, you have Keon Coleman, you have Curtis Samuel, you have MVS, and you have Mac Hollins. I think those 5 guys are going to be lockstep, solidified, they've made this roster. So it's all about the sixth wide receiver, who is going to make this team. I will stop you right there. I don't see this Buffalo Bills organization rolling with 7. They very rarely do. And I don't think that 2 of these guys fighting for this final spot are going to be able to do enough to convince the Buffalo Bills coaching staff otherwise. But it's Shavers, it's KJ Hamler, it's Justin Shorter, it's Andy Isabella. Out of all 4 of those guys, who is going to solidify their spot? Normally, I would say it was KJ Hamler. Normally, I would say that it could have been Andy Isabella as well, simply because we need somebody to take care of that kick return and punt return responsibility. But with the absolute arrival of our recent draft pick, slot corner Daquan Hardy, I have a feeling he's locked up that role on this organization already. So a KJ Hamler and Andy Isabella, they're certainly going to have wow plays, and not just one. I'm talking they need to have consistent production if they want any shot whatsoever. As far as Shorter, I know a lot of people have wanted this guy to make this team for some years, but in my opinion, I think this is Shavers' role unless some of these other guys can really step up and make it an impression. But at the end of the day, I think Shavers is probably my number 1 pick to go out there and secure their spot. Now, next up is going to be running back. And listen, the second that we ended up bringing Frank Gore Jr. onto this roster, everybody loves nostalgia, right? They think of the days when Frank Gore was indeed a Buffalo Bill. And I mean, really among 19 other NFL teams, let's be honest with ourselves. But I've always been the one to not get hung up on romanticizing somebody that just comes from a professional football player's bloodline. I have to see it being proven out on the field. And I think it's fair to say that James Cook and Ray Davis have locked down their spots on the depth chart. So now it turns into who's going to win running back 3. When you look at our roster, typically we roll with 4 running backs each and every single year. And one of those running backs just so happens to be Reggie Gilliam, who is our fullback / tight end. He'll probably be listed as a running back this year. So that spot is going to be completely solidified. So now it comes down into who is going to be RB3. Is it going to be Frank Gore Jr.? Is it going to be Ty Johnson, who this coaching staff very much loves? He was a huge contributor last year to this run game. So Frank Gore Jr., if he is going to make this roster, he needs to show some more splashes, even more. This is a perfect opportunity for Frank Gore Jr. because while the Buffalo Bills aren't starting any of their starters, the Carolina Panthers, for the first time this preseason, are indeed. So if Frank Gore Jr. goes out there with his reps, and if he can actually cook against the Carolina Panthers starting defense, he could make a name for himself right here. So anybody that's hoping for him to be named to the 53, watch out. This is his opportunity. Shout out Frank Gore as well, because both him and Ray Davis ranked top 2 in overall offensive production from running backs throughout the entire league this preseason. And I would be pleasantly surprised if he does end up securing this spot, but show it to us on Saturday. Next up is going to be tight end Zach Davidson. And folks, when you reflect on the Buffalo Bills roster, 9 times out of 10, they are only rolling with 3 tight ends. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. Last year, it was Quentin Morris. And Quentin Morris has been a piece of this offense for quite some time. And I mean, granted, anything is up on the table since this is Joe Brady's actual first year of being in control of the personnel, the playbook, the play calling, what have you. So Zach Davidson really has an opportunity of being able to threaten Quentin Morris for that tight end 3 spot. As I've mentioned previously, I don't see us going with 4 tight ends, but for anybody that has been rooting for this guy, he's been making a lot of plays in training camp, looked pretty good in the preseason so far, but I will say that he has a lot of ground to catch up on, not only to unseat Quentin Morris, but also unseat the pedestal that this coaching staff already has on Quentin Morris in the first place. Zach Davidson certainly going to be watching this guy, but I'll be completely honest with you, I think he's going to be practice squad. Last but not least, I do have that last spot on the offensive line. Now, when I look at it, I feel like there's really only a couple of people that are battling for that final spot. Of course, you have Lyle Collins, you have Will Clapp, you have Richard Gourage, and then Kevin Jarvis. And here's the thing. I think nobody was anticipating Tylen Grable to really step up and fill in that specific role on the offensive line. He has been looking incredible, especially for how late we ended up drafting him. He's done enough to where the coaches have him almost as a 53-man roster lock. So I think this spells trouble for Richard Gourage, for Kevin Jarvis, and now it's going to be between Lyle Collins and then Will Clapp. Will Clapp obviously is a center. I have a feeling that the center depth chart already, with McGovern being number one, although I'm not the happiest about this, I would definitely love to see Cedric Van Pran-Granger take that role. Next up being Cedric Van Pran-Granger, and then number 3, Alec Anderson, who, trust me, I'm not excited about at all being on the depth chart at center in the first place. I just think it's going to be impossible for Will Clapp to solidify this. My favorite to win, hands down, Lyle Collins. He's so versatile. Yes, he has an injury history, hasn't been the same since he hasn't gotten over that bug, but the fact that he can play right tackle, left guard, right guard, you cannot not have him on this roster. I've been concerned about our left guard position. I'm not so much concerned about McGovern being center. I think he'll figure it out. But the left guard really gives me some trouble. David Edwards and Dion Dawkins simply haven't demonstrated the chemistry where they can consistently create opportunities for running backs to run north-south and be able to hit those A-gaps. So if Lyle Collins can potentially be a solution at the left guard position, if David Edwards can't gain chemistry with Dion Dawkins, I am completely fine with that. But as of right now, I have Lyle Collins winning out of all of those names I just mentioned, but I will be keeping an eye out. Who knows? So, folks, that's going to have to do it for today's preview of the Buffalo Bills versus the Carolina Panthers on Saturday afternoon. I will be live reacting to that game. Highly suggest you tune in. I live react to each and every single game all season. It's a ball. It's basically like I'm sitting there watching football with my boys. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and even more importantly, turn on those bell notifications so you're always notified each and every single time that I hop on stream. Thank you all so much for tuning in to yet another edition of the Dom Mafia Report, and I will see you tomorrow.